Hi everyone, and welcome to our video on flowcharts. In computer programming, sometimes we need to solve a problem and the problem might be quite complex. So before we can start coding, we need to take the problem and break it down into parts. And we can do that with various tools. One of the tools we can use is a flowchart. A flowchart is a visual representation of something that we could follow, and then we could take the flowchart as a planning tool, and then we could go and code from there in whatever language we want, C++ or Java or Python. So a flowchart is written in English. It's not written in any language. So avoid using any programming code in a flowchart. You can see in this example here, we've got a flowchart for the card game called Go Fish. And we got various symbols here. We've got ovals or ellipses, we've got diamonds, we've got rectangles, and other different shapes here. So it's important that we understand, first of all, what those shapes mean in flowcharting. So let's go take a look. So first of all, this one here is an oval or an ellipse, and what that symbol represents is the start or the end of your flowchart. So anytime we're beginning a flowchart, we're going to put this symbol first, and anytime we're ending a flowchart, we're going to put this symbol. So this represents the start or the end. The flow is going to be shown by arrows, so make sure you draw straight arrows, and they should have arrowheads on the end, and they should be either horizontal lines or vertical lines. Please avoid using diagonal lines or curved lines. They should be horizontal or they should be vertical. This symbol here, a parallelogram, represents an input or an output. So if we're asking the user to enter some number that's input, we are going to use a parallelogram. Or if we're going to output something to a screen, whatever it is, numbers or text, then we're going to use this symbol, the parallelogram, to show output. Process is represented by a rectangle. And an example of a process would be, say, adding two dice values together, dice number 1 and dice number 2. So maybe you're summing numbers, or maybe you're finding the area of a circle. That would be a process, and you'd be doing some calculation using some formula. So that's an example of a process. This is a diamond, and that represents a decision. And this one's a little bit different than these other ones here, because for these ones here, you should have one arrow going in to the symbol and one arrow going out. Same with the process. For the decision, you should have one arrow coming in, and it should branch in two different directions. And typically the decision is either true or false, or yes or no. So we will be branching out of this symbol. No other symbols we should be branching from. This is the only symbol that we should be using. So that is some of the symbols that you can use. This isn't all the symbols. Let's take a look at a program you can use for free to create a flowchart. So we're going to go into Google, and if you go search for draw.io, it's going to take you to this here. We're going to click on this, and what it does is it first asks you any flowcharts that you make, where do you want to save them to? Let's save them to our Google Drive. That way we'll keep everything organized in our Google Drive. We are going to authorize, because yes, we're going to let it save to our Google Drive. So let's do that. Then if you're not signed in, it is going to ask you to sign in. So let's do that so that we can access this program. Are we going to allow permission? Yes, we are. We are going to do that, and we are going to allow it to view and manage drive folders. And yes, we're going to allow this program to do that. So once we get to here, we can either create a new flowchart or we can open an existing one. So we're going to go to create new diagram, and we can go to blank diagram. We'll first make a title here, and we'll just call this practice using flowcharts. And we'll go to blank program, and we'll go to create. And if we want to save in the main Google Drive folder, we could do that, or we could go and pick a folder. You might want to have everything organized in a folder. For now, I'm just going to go use the root folder just to show you this here. So then it looks like this here. So if you notice over on the left hand side, we have the tools that we looked at. So in other words, we do have an ellipse here, and I can click and I can drag this ellipse. Remember, that's used for start and it's used for stop. Also over here we've got a diamond. So we have a diamond here. We can bring this in, and here's a parallelogram. We talked about that being used for input output. This is used for decisions. Notice these, you can click and drag and move things around and so on. We also have a standard rectangle here, so we can bring that in as well. If I want to draw, I can click on this here and bring in this connector, and I can connect just by moving these dots here. So I could do this like this, and like we said, we want to have vertical lines here, so we'll try to make this vertical in this case here, like so. And like I said, if you want to just connect, we can bring these in and we can connect these like so. So that is a program that you can use to create a flowchart. Very important in flowcharts that we label things. There is a text tool here, so we should always label things at the top. So make sure you've got the name of your project here. Make sure you've got that, so we know what this flowchart is for. We should have your name here as well, so make sure you include that. You can change the font size and different things with the fonts. You can do that over here on the right hand side. And make sure that any branches that you have, so for instance, if we have a branch from our decision, branches should be labeled as well. So I might want to label this. If I go this way, then the decision is true. And I could label this here. If I go this direction here, then I'm going to label this as false. So make sure that you label your branches for any decisions that you make, so it's clear when the reader is looking at this what those branches are for. So that's a brief introduction to how you can use draw.io to create a flowchart. Let's just take a look at some examples of previous students of things that maybe we want to avoid using. So let's go take a look. So here's one example here. We have someone who has used the right symbol to start their flowchart, but then right away they've branched from a oval or an ellipse, and you can't do that in flowcharting. You can only have one branch coming from a start, so we can't have two branches coming from a start symbol. So watch out for things like that. Another one here, if you take a look, they've used start properly here. But notice here that we have things like this here where you're branching and then you're putting an arrow to that branch. Instead, let's put this arrow right at the top here. So if this has to feed back and branch to here, let's put it right inside here. So watch out for that as well. Here's one that has a number of diagonal lines. Like we said, we want to avoid diagonal lines. We want to avoid overlapping lines. So let's avoid that. Instead of doing this here, let's move this so we can put this inside here. So again, we don't have diagonal lines going this way and then going back this way. This is what we call a cyclical piece of logic here. They're saying that from here you can branch out and then you can come back in. This we have to avoid doing. A decision should have two branches, one branch here, one here. Avoid doing this. We should not have this in our flowchart. So that's just a brief introduction to flowcharts and how we can use draw.io to create a flowchart. I hope this was informative. Hopefully it helps you understand flowcharts. They are very important in programming. That's it for this video. We'll see you next time.